quickly, I've got some questions on a number of them, but if you want to just take us through them slide by slide, and I will stop you if I've got something to ask.
Certainly. Can you see those slides, Deputy Mayor?
I can, thank you. Yep.
Thank you. So the slides today, they cover the reporting period from the financial year up to and including the 30th of September. And as always, we will start with prevention. So to the end of September, we completed 1,874 home fire safety visits. And as you can see from the graph on the left, that has shown a steady increase in home fire safety visits throughout the financial year. That trend has continued through October and November. The amount of 1,874 is very similar to the same period last year. What is a dramatic improvement is the targeting of those most vulnerable in our communities. So last year, for the entire year, we did approximately 600 high and very high visits. And as you can see from the graph on the right, we've already surpassed that by some way, and we're currently up at 1,400 high and very high visits that we've done.
And can I just ask whether or not the reason for that is because of targeting, or just because we've got more vulnerable people out there? And also, can I just ask who is doing those visits?
So those visits are undertaken by our prevention staff and also station staff on watches. So each watch will undertake a number of referrals. The reason why we have improved the targeting of high and very high is just improvements that we've made to the referral process. So the referral process now matches what we actually, the questions we ask whilst we do a home fire safety visit. So actually, on point of referral, we can identify those people that are most vulnerable in our communities and prioritise those for a visit by either prevention staff or watch staff.
And just out of interest, the relatively low number of very high, is that just because there aren't that many places that are assessed as being very high risk?
Yes, there isn't as many categorised as very high across North Yorkshire, but those high and very high, those are our priorities to get through.
And who is in that? What would be in the high category?
With regards to the high category, it is person-centred, so it's dependent on a lot of characteristics. So it will be to do with behaviours in the home, age, any ill health. All of those things will identify as an individual that we need to prioritise.
Great. We can move on when you're ready.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Albeit we always prioritise areas within homes, the prevention team do a lot of other activity, and as you can see there, activity covering youth intervention, water safety, our Dark Nights campaign, and also road safety activities do continue. That is primarily through our dedicated prevention staff, but lots of other engagement outside of home fire safety visits still continues.
Great, thank you. And just in terms of those prevention interventions, I just had a couple of conversations with people over the last couple of weeks around the school visits, and just what the approach is around schools, whether or not there's a balance, what your balance is between the primary settings and secondary schools, and just how do you do those? Just if you could set out a little bit about how those visits take place, and just whether anything's changed in terms of how that's done.
Certainly. So with regards to the school visits, That is usually undertaken by local watches that will contact, and dependent on the age of the students that the visits are taking place, will be dependent on the information that's being provided by either watches or the dedicated prevention staff. But all details of that can be accessed online as well, Deputy Mayor.
And would it be is it firefighters that do those school visits, or is it a balance between those and the public safety, a wider public safety team?
It's a balance, Deputy Mayor.
Right, fine. And has any of that changed?
Not that I am aware of, Deputy Mayor, at the moment. I don't know if Tom is on the line, who heads up prevention.
I think JD wants to come in, so maybe he's got JD. I don't really want to come in.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. No, from our perspective, nothing's changed insofar as we are an organisation that resources to risk. So our offer to the public is available in our prevention and protection strategies, which are available online. What we will always do is then target and move our resources necessary into the communities, and also in a seasonal time, as with bonfire nights or anything else, what we need to do. So what we ask crews to do and our protection and prevention staff to do will change throughout the year. It isn't a set format which just covers one set period. And we also tie into the National Fire Chiefs Council event activities, which is a year's calendar, which we also tie into and make sure that we're doing those activities in line with the National Forum. Thank you.
Thank you. And Matt, did you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think the Chief's probably just covered most of it, but I think it's about providing an opportunity to be agile as a service, with the core element being that we target the most vulnerable. That's the critical element of this. So actually, it's about flexing as a service to ensure that we're able to demonstrate that we're targeting the most vulnerable people within our county, but also, as the Chief has just mentioned, being able to satisfy and deliver some of the most recent campaign activities throughout the year.
Great. And just in terms of the Dark Nights campaign, what, just as opposed to a kind of wider school intervention, just what would take place in a Dark Nights campaign that you wouldn't cover necessarily in a school visit more widely? Sorry, that might be one for Damien, seeing as we're back on his slides.
I'm happy to take that one, Deputy Mayor, if that's okay.
Why don't you start, and then if Matt wants to come in, we'll come back.
With regards to, sorry, Deputy Mayor, with regards to the Dark Nights, that is the time around bonfire night where we have fireworks, so it does directly target those individuals with safety messages for anyone who is having a bonfire, those things, and also safety in and around fires at that time.
And that's predominantly for young people as well, though, is it?
It is, yes.
Great. Matt, you've taken your hand down. I assume that means you no longer need to come in. Perfect. Great. All right, we can move on. Thank you, Damien.
Thank you. With regards to protection, overall fire safety activity has increased by 8% on the same reporting period of last year. And you can see there, with regards to the jobs that have been completed, this equates to 183 days of activity. A lot of our activity is the regulatory activity. So that is our risk-based intervention programme. Excuse me. So that is our commercial industrial premises across the county of North Yorkshire that our fire safety experts go into to look at them with regards to the regulatory reform order and make sure that these commercial industrial type buildings are all safe. And as you can see, there's other areas that we have done. These are where we get requests in for changes to buildings, and where we provide guidance to business owners. This is an area where we do benchmark really well across the sector. So on average across the sector, there are 2 inspections per 100 known premises. Within North Yorkshire, we're currently at double that of 4, but lots of activity is happening within protection to understand the risk across all of the built environment and to make sure that our business fire safety team are getting into those buildings that are most needed of it.
I just had a question about the automatic fire alarms, unwanted fire alarm follow-ups.
Yes.
So it was really just, I think there'd been talk at some point around a charging mechanism around those. I suppose it's just a question about whether you can just say something about how you balance kind of compliance with advice that your firefighters would be giving people with public safety and just ensuring that people aren't complacent, because one of the risks, I guess, with repeat unwanted fire alarms is that people kind of start to ignore them in an unhelpful way, and therefore, you know, there's a real risk then that when something really does happen, people aren't in the right mindset. So just anything you can say just around that whole piece around either recharging or compliance with advice and how that would work, just to ensure that we're not that we've kind of got the risk balance right there, if there's anything you can say about that.
Yes, certainly, Deputy Mayor. So this is something that was presented at a previous online public meeting. We have introduced a 5-stage approach, the last of those stages being the ability for the fire and rescue to charge those repeat premises that are offending. But what we do within the previous 4 stages of that is we really work with business owners to make sure that their fire facilities are appropriate. So
yeah,
that could mean that they've got a smoke alarm where actually it would be more beneficial to have a heat alarm. So we're working with those premises a lot prior to it getting to any time where we would charge. And certainly a number of buildings, there is an expectation that you may get some false alarms. You know, if you've got a hospital that's, you know, a large hospital, they are more likely to have a false alarm. So we take a bespoke approach to each of the premises, but we work with the business owners first to make sure that they've done everything that they can just to reduce those automatic fire alarms before we'd start to look to charge them.
Yeah, and just to kind of reassure people, I guess, I assume that there'd be no recharging unless there'd been a number of pieces of advice that officers had given and that those had been ignored. If people are broadly trying their best to be compliant with advice, presumably even if they end up with lots of false alarms, like you say, about hospitals or, you know, I guess in older people's houses where people burn toast or whatever and it sets things off. I assume that there's a different approach to those things. But do you do anything to ensure that people aren't, if you do get those repeat call outs, to ensure that people aren't complacent about the fire alarm going off?
Certainly, and the message will still go out, you know, as soon as a fire alarm goes off, you know, we want people to vacate the premises and call out the fire and rescue service. If they're business owners, you know, most of the business owners will have someone responsible as a fire warden, and they can look to investigate. But certainly in the homes, we do come out to false alarms in domestic premises. We wouldn't take this approach within domestic premises, and we would, you know, just ensure that everything is okay. And certainly when we do get the false alarms in domestic premises, what we will do, we will sit down with the occupier and see if there's anything that we can do to support them with regards to a home fire safety visit, if that's appropriate. Great.
Brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, we can move on to the next one.
Thank you. So response incidents, is very similar. We've had 54 more incidents in the same reporting period this year than we did last year. As you can see from the chart below, false alarm incidents are still the most predominant that we get, and we've had an increase of 111 of those incidents. But we have seen a decrease in fire-related incidents and also special service incidents. Just for information, the fire incidents are all fire incidents, so that could be a small fire in the open all the way up to fires in buildings, either commercial or dwelling. And that equates to 22 incidents per day across our service area.
Great, thank you. And just a couple of things that struck me. One, presumably the reduction in fires and special service incidents, that's a testimony to the prevention work that's already been going on, which is great. I guess the only other thing, just in terms of those, if you get clusters, which I think has happened, certainly to my knowledge, recently, if you get clusters of, for example, fires in parks or bins or those kind of places, would you tailor some of that school safety visits, those kind of things? Might you do some targeted work with some of those schools nearby if there were incidents like that were taking place in particular areas?
We certainly would, Deputy Mayor. So one of the areas that we've looked at in some detail this year is any post-incident engagement. So if we do have an incident, or as you've said, a cluster of incidents, what can we do to reduce the risk of that, be that in one dwelling, or actually if we get a cluster of incidents in an area, maybe that a fire's in open in the evening, we will use that information to target our prevention activity.
Great. I think that's fine.
Thank you. Next slide is with regards to response times, and I appreciate that the spotlight presentation is on this today, but our overall response is 12 minutes and 1 second. That's to all incidents, so special services, primary fires, dwelling fires, all incidents that we may attend is currently at 12 minutes and 1 second. Primary fires is at 12 minutes and 37 seconds. We include this because Home Office statistics look at primary fires. Primary fires is quite a large definition, but the best way to look at it is anything where you could assign a monetary value. So as an example, a farmer's crops would be categorised as a primary fire, but the stubble after the crops had been harvested, that would go down as a secondary fire. So primary fires do include dwelling fires, but it's not just fires within properties. And then, as you can see, dwelling fires, we're currently across the service area at 10 minutes and 29 seconds.
Okay, well, I'm happy to pick those bits up, to be honest, under the thematic bit later, so you can move on to the next one, because I'll just raise the questions, given that we've got this on again a bit later. I'll just wait.
Thank you. Fire engine availability. So this is across both our on-call and whole-time fire engines. As we previously reported, we did see a reduction from last year. We have put a lot of effort into our on-call recruitment, and we've got an on-call dedicated station manager that's doing a lot of work to ensure that we improve the recruitment, the retention, and the availability of our on-call. And as you can see, over this 6-month period, we've kept quite static with regards to our overall fire engine availability. We do lose some on-call staff members, but we have had 2 recent on-call recruits courses. The last one finished last week. So we are doing far more than other services that have seen a real decline in on-call availability. We're managing to keep that at a level, and with all of the activity in that area, we will hopefully start to see an increase, certainly in our on-call availability.
Great. Yeah, that was one of my questions. Just, I guess my a couple of my kind of broader questions, if you like, were just about what the availability is during the peak demand times, so when most fires are likely to occur, which my understanding is it's broadly speaking during the day and when people are awake, and then just related to that, whether there is anything that we can do to increase that capacity and availability, particularly of the on-call firefighters during the day. I know I've been talking to the Chief Fire Officer about whether or not as a combined authority there might be a way of talking about to employers, for example, about how they might release their staff during the day, or whether nationally there is something we should be calling for in terms of particular employers like supermarkets or big national employers where we know there might be a particular issue, and whether actually it might be helpful to have some other people weighing in on this to try and improve our availability during those peak times when we know the risks will be the greatest, so during the day when people are awake. So there was just those 2 points, if you've got anything you can add on those.
Yes, certainly. With regards to our on-call availability, it does fluctuate between day and night. We do have high levels of availability during the night because a lot of our on-call staff, they do give us a huge commitment in hours, but most of our on-call staff will have primary employment elsewhere. So it is always a challenge to provide greater availability during the day. We do look at that on the point of recruitment, so we don't only look at what hours staff can give us, but are those the key hours that we need during the day to provide a response from that location. There has been some national changes with regards to on-call, so we can now recruit people that may not be able to offer the hours that we would have previously asked for, but if they are key hours, which will mean that a fire engine is available from a location, we would look to recruit those into the on-call. We are doing a lot of work with employers, and a lot of employers do support our on-call, which we are truly grateful for, and we're doing a lot of work currently to ensure that we can give the recognition back to those employers that do free up the staff to be able to respond to an incident in their local areas. So there's lots of work that's currently happening in this area, Deputy Mayor, but certainly trying to get more availability during the day is one of the priorities, because we do have quite healthy cover when people have sort of come home from their primary employment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's definitely something I'm very happy to try and help with if I can. And certainly I know that the wider combined authority, it's one of the strengths of having a mayor is that we've got the ability to reach out to either particular employers where we might have a particular issue in a particular part of the patch, or just more generally if there are some large employers where actually making some very specific asks, and also, as you say, doing some good recognition of employers who actually do make people available or provide them with some support or give them a bit of time off after they've been called out, for example. It's getting those balances right, isn't it? That's really helpful, thank you. We can move on.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So one of the other areas that we look at is risk information. So these are the buildings, not just buildings though, but other risks, including sort of wildfire risks and water risks across our site. We've actually got well over 1,400 of these sites where firefighters will go out, familiarise themselves with those risks and put together tactical plans to be able in the unlikely event of an incident that we would be able to respond as effectively as we possibly can. Out of those 1,400, as you can see there, we've currently got 51 risks which are overdue a review. This work has been prioritised, and the Director for Community Risk and Resilience has been hosting a chairing a working group that's looked at this, and we've reduced the number of these by over 2/3 already, and this area of work is being currently prioritised to make sure all our risk information is in date. On the right hand side of this slide, we do performance audits at each of our stations. This is to make sure that we get some qualitative information with regards to what our crews are doing, making sure that they've got a good level of understanding about all things that they may be asked to do. And also an introduction that we've done within the last 12 months is incident monitoring. So this is if a middle level manager within the organisation gets turned out to an incident and they don't have to take over as the incident commander, they can then monitor that incident and provide a report back to whoever was incident command, which just improves learning across the organisation. And this is an area that certainly was identified in the previous HMICFRS inspection.
Right, and just in terms of those very high risk sites, if they are overdue, how long is it likely to take to actually get round them? So what's the kind of delay and prioritisation that would take place?
Certainly that number was a lot higher, and we over the past 2 months, Deputy Mayor, that number has gone really down. So out of those 8, the crews and the station managers at all of those locations will have made contact with the business owners already. It is just about getting an appropriate day that they can come in, because again, we want to gather that information just in case there is an incident at those sites. But we are respectful that, you know, they may be running a business, so we do try and do it in line with the building owners as well. But
Absolutely.
I'm pretty certain that all of those 8 will have already been contacted and will be scheduled in the next month.
Okay, fine. So it's in terms of risk, it's relatively tightly managed.
Yes.
Fine. Okay. In which case, I think is that. Have you got any more slides? I think you might have one.
Only asking for questions, Deputy Mayor.
I've just been doing them as I go along. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Damien. And I think we're over to Ben.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll just share my screen, load my presentation. If you could just let me know it's working okay, please.
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay, just go from the start. Thank you. Good to go. Thank you. So yeah, again, my name is Ben Ilsley. I'm the area manager responsible for emergency response in North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service, probably the most emotive area of the business we do. So the starting point for our emergency response to the presentation today is looking at what do we respond to in North Yorkshire. So it's already been covered in the kind of previous slide there. We did a comprehensive fire cover review over the last few months, and over the last 5 years worked out that approximately 20 to 21 incidents per day in North Yorkshire for the Fire and Rescue Service. So whilst there's been a lot of really good work gone into call challenging, looking at reducing the number of false alarms we attend, we're still at a point in time where 9 of those incidents turn out to be false alarms when we arrive. So on average, we attend 12 true incidents as a fire and rescue service per day. So breaking that down slightly further, approximately 4 per day are fires, 4 to 5 are fires, and the rest are, we bracket in something called special services. So that includes road traffic collisions, lift rescues, and where we've seen growth in that over recent years is supporting the ambulance service more now. So as a fire and rescue service, we're looking to support more our partner agencies, for example, by assisting entry. If paramedics get to a property and there's somebody in distress inside and they can't gain access, we will gain entry. So that's a bit of an overview of what our kind of demand profile per day is per incident. So next day I want to...
And just in terms of the time response for those then, so does that mean you would coordinate with the ambulance service after they've arrived? So actually potentially a response time is on top of the ambulance response time?
So generally we will await till the paramedics get there and understand that they can't. It'll be requested from their control room into our control room, yes.
Right, yeah, fine. Great, thank you.
Thank you. So the next slide is defining what we respond with in North Yorkshire. So we have, as I mentioned before, 21 incidents per day. And what we've seen through the fire cover review over the last 5 years is that a growing number of them require the attendance of just one fire engine. So to manage expectations and for community reassurance, we are a very safe place to live in North Yorkshire and visit and work. And approximately 82% of the incidents we attend as a fire and rescue service require the attendance of just one appliance, which kind of defines that they're slightly less serious, if that makes sense. So you can see in the terms of the small red bar graph at the top of there, less than 4% of the incidents we attend now as a fire and rescue service require the attendance of 3 or more fire engines, which is why, and I'll cover later in the slide, why when we've gone out for consultation recently on response standards, it's based on the first appliance in attendance. So that's a bit of an overview of what we respond to and what we respond with in our emergency response function.
And just, I know we're doing the inspection a bit later, so we can pick it up then with whoever's doing that. But just, I guess the question about those incidents, and I absolutely take the point that 82% will only require one appliance to attend, which is actually very reassuring, I think, for most people. I guess it's just what the very small number of much higher demand incidents, just understanding those risks, because ultimately we're only as good as our worst case scenario, aren't we? And it's just a kind of this very small number that are the 3+ pumps, for example, or the 2+ pumps for us because of the geography. It's just really understanding what's been happening them, and they look pretty constant.
Yes, yeah, so we're all acutely aware of June 2022 Deputy Mayor, where the vast majority of UK Fire and Rescue Services declared a major incident during the wildfire season. So as part of our next community risk management plan that will go live next year and cover the next 3 or 4 years, we are acutely aware we're not changing the number of appliances we have available because we have to be prepared for that worst case scenario, as you mentioned as well. So fortunately in North Yorkshire, large 10-pump incidents are much less frequent than they are in other parts of the country, but we do need to have those resources there for that reason, for those kind of spate conditions and large-scale incidents when they occur.
Great. Yep, thank you. We can move on.
Thank you. So in terms of our response provisions, there's a map on the left-hand side there depicting where we have fire stations and what duty systems we operate. So the red dots on there are whole-time fire stations. So we currently have them at York, Acomb, Harrogate and Scarborough. So that is fully contracted firefighters who are available for an incident response 24 hours a day, operating a shift duty system. The 7-day crewed appliances, the blue dots on the screen there, Selby, Tadcaster, Ripon, Richmond, Northallerton, Malton and Whitby. They operate positive hours during the daytime between 8 in the morning and 6 p.m. where they're instantly available. And outside of those hours, they go on to retainers and alerters. So they can go home and there's a 5-minute turn-in for them to get back for an emergency response outside those hours. And then the green dots on there, I won't list them all for time, is all our on-call stations. So that makes up 70% of our response provision in North Yorkshire. So a number of our day crewed stations also have an on-call provision as well. That obviously creates certain challenges that we experience similar to other services around the country that are predominantly rural as well. So the challenges we do face in North Yorkshire are we're the second largest service area in the country. The largest is Devon and Somerset, which is an amalgamation of 2 counties. So we are the largest standalone county in the country. The way the funding formula works, based on council tax precept and business rates and other funding, means that we have an exceptionally large area to cover compared to the budget we have in North Yorkshire, which means, based on risk and the budget we have, we are predominantly on-call fire cover model, which does come with its own challenges, given the way that people's lifestyles are changing in rural areas. So what it means, we've also done some work looking at our catchment areas for the on-call. So if you want to be an on-call firefighter and live within 4 or 5 minutes of the station area, you need to be within that basis ready to respond to the station in the event of an emergency call. So what we found by doing detailed analysis is in a lot of these station areas, we've got a declining number of people, and they're also aging population who are less able to be on-call firefighters as well. So we are going to have to look at being more innovative and look at, reasonable planning assumptions over the next 5-10 years about how we provide rural fire cover, given the fact that some of these station footprints are becoming more challenging, the way people live their lives now, less people are available to give us cover during daytimes as well. Obviously, with the geography, we have comparatively large drive times. So if there's an incident in some parts of the county, it will take us time to get there, given how many miles it would be, and some of the unique road networks we have in North Yorkshire as well. I've made the point earlier about the way that the day crew and the on-call duty systems work as well. So what that means is that 33 of our stations, or our fire appliances, when they receive a fire call, before they can mobilise to that incident, they're required to turn in from whether it's their primary employment or their lives or their homes. So it means that every incident they attend has 4 or 5 minutes onto their response time before they actually turn out on the fire appliance, which then does create challenges for us, and why we'll never have the same response times as some of the urban metropolitan fire services. Yeah, I'll move on.
Yeah, that's fine. Yep, you can move on.
Thank you. Okay, so in terms of trying to better understand where we benchmark against the rest of the country, so the graph on the right-hand side here in the presentation is an extract from the Home Office's annual report on response times. And what you can see there over the last 10 years is there's been a gradual increase in response times for most fire and rescue services from 2014 to 2023. I'll cover the definitions of predominantly rural, significantly rural, and predominantly urban later on the next slide. But what we are seeing now is the challenges of the on-call being raised in certain national reports. So ONS figures show that there's been a 25% reduction in on-call firefighters nationally since 2011. And obviously, when we've got 70% of our fire cover model based on on-call stations, that does provide challenges. And I think last year, the NYFRS, His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary Fire and Rescue Services, they released a national report called The State of Fire. So that's learning from all the different individual inspections they do and any thematics, and they pull out any national trends in there. And you can see the quotations on there. Challenges faced by the sector, such as the unsustainability of the on-call duty system, requires a system-wide and constructive response, and also long-standing problems with availability of on-call staff, particularly during traditional office hours. And they've put there that they view the on-call duty system as facing decline and becoming unsustainable. So we want to be a lot more optimistic than that in North Yorkshire. It's hard to explain to members of the community and the public here how much work in North Yorkshire goes to working against that and stemming against that. The amazing commitment our on-call firefighters give, and it's about us trying to adapt our organisation to be more friendly to what they need to do. The reporting period last time that has been shown in the slides earlier today, we have seen a positive increase over the last 2 months of on-call availability, which we'll be able to report later on. But whereas it is declining in most parts of the country, we are certainly plateauing North Yorkshire and very optimistic about what we can do to improve it.
Great. Yep. No, we can move on. I think I'm fully aware of the challenges with on-call, and I think they're probably part of a wider conversation that we've been having over time. But yes, yeah, it is challenging, and we definitely need that work with employers, I think, or just a slightly, as you say, creative approach to these things.
Thank you. I appreciate you supporting that. And so this next slide is NYFRS, which I mentioned earlier. They're getting better now at getting data returns from fire services, and it's enabling us to benchmark comparisons in a lot of key areas. So firstly, I said I'd cover this. So the Home Office categorises England's fire and rescue services into 3 different groups. Predominantly urban, which is predominantly kind of metropolitan areas such as London, West Midlands, West Yorkshire. And then the other 2 groups are predominantly rural and significantly rural. So what we've done there is benchmarked our availability of appliances against the 28 predominantly or significantly rural fire and rescue services. So we're the red line there, comfortably in the middle. We want to be the best at what we do. But what it does show us is giving us some sense of security that we are benchmarking relatively well, because some of the other services on there cover much smaller geographical areas and have comparatively higher budgets than we have in North Yorkshire.
I was going to say, actually, it's not just the geography; it's also the budgets that they have available that I know are a particular challenge for us.
Certainly is. So we certainly want to improve our availability. We're working incredibly hard to do so. But I think the important thing to make sure that people understand is we're in no way an outlier as a fire and rescue service in this area, and benchmark comfortably well within our family group of other fire and rescue services.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So the next area, so we are keen to shift the focus in North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service within response towards improving our response times. So we mentioned earlier all the challenges we have in North Yorkshire, but kind of last year what we looked at is what is within our control in North Yorkshire to improve our response times. So we got together key stakeholders from different areas and produced a response times improvement plan. So some of the areas that we've looked at there, when I joined the organisation in January last year, at a similar time to NYFRS's report, we received an inadequate grading and cause of concern for workforce planning. So at that point in time, more than 40% of staff who were in a managerial position were temporary in role. So we've done masses of work on recruitment and promotion boards to get to a point where we're predominantly substantive in role, and the number of people with temporary in promotions is less than 10% now. So massive improvement, gives stability to the organisation and availability of appliances as well. So we've improved the degradation plans to make sure that if we do have any gaps in fire cover in our on-call areas, we're much more aligned to risk and response times in the way we backfill them with our operational staffing reserve, which is a pool of people who are available to provide cover at different places on different days, depending on the fluctuations of availability in those areas. As mentioned earlier, we created a station manager role looking at on-call futures, and that's had a really positive impact on improving the recruitment and retention experience of on-call firefighters, and meant that the occupancy of our courses has improved as well. We created a new detached duties policy, working well with the Fire Brigades Union. And what that's allowed us to do is that if a firefighter covers one station away from their home location for that day, they now stay for the full shift. So we don't have 1 hour at the start of the shift and 1 hour at the end of the shift where they're travelling back to their base location. So that's been a positive improvement. And then in terms of performance management and creating KPIs for all the different elements that make up a response time that I'll cover later on in the report, including call handling and control, turn-in times and turn-out times. We've significantly improved our quality assurance processes for the data that we submit to the Home Office as well. And we're in the process of bringing into service a dynamic cover tool, which will allow us to provide lifetime analysis of where best to move our assets on a daily basis to make sure they're providing the best coverage for risk and response times. So a lot of work went into that and is ongoing over the last year or so.
Great. No, that's really good. And it's just really also heartening to hear about, you know, collaborative working and just kind of being able to listen to what works for staff on the ground and then being able to reflect that in how we're kind of changing things. So, yeah, brilliant. You can carry on.
Thank you. So I mentioned call handling there. So this is the actions taken part in our fire control room, which was based in North Island. So we've got a brilliant team up there. They've done a lot of work over the last year to change the way they work and receive calls to focus more on the time taken to mobilise assets. So you can see there for all primary fires, which is, you know, there's a definition, I won't read it out, but as Damien mentioned earlier, a loose definition around what a primary fire is. We saw a year-on-year improvement through this from 1 minute 46 seconds to 1 minute 38 seconds. And then in terms of dwelling fires, which is predominantly a fire in somebody's home, a 10-second improvement year on year. So really proud and impressed of our control team there, really well led by the station manager there. And it's led to, so that means is that every call that's received in our control room, we are mobilising an asset to that scene significantly quicker year on year. So really well done by them, and that's led to big improvements.
Yeah, and I've been to the control room and seen them in action, and actually it is for a business, in some ways you would think that the fact that there aren't tons of calls every single day would make their jobs easier. I actually think it probably makes it much harder, because it just means when the calls do come in, they've really got to be able to react very quickly, having not necessarily been doing something in exactly the same 10 minutes before. So it's just a kind of real skill, and I would agree with you that there's a real tribute to the staff who are working in those control rooms for the work that they're doing over very long shifts as well, just kind of keeping alert all the way through, so that when those calls come through, they're able to pick them up and, as you say, turn out a crew quickly. So that is really encouraging in terms of the times, you know, the performance around those times.
Well, I appreciate that, Deputy Mayor. Thank you. The next there in terms of overall response time. So live on your website, yours and the Mayor's website, we've undergone a 6-week public consultation to set a response standard. So I think it's very important for us. We were criticised by NYFRS 2 years ago for not having one. And basically it's setting a standard for how quickly we should respond to emergencies in North Yorkshire. So in line with a lot of the rest of the sector, we set 2 different standards. One is for specifically dwelling fires. So we've gone through the public consultation now and had very positive response to support this. So we will respond within an average attendance time for the first fire engine within 11 minutes. So that includes all the call handling time in control, any turn-in times for the on-call to get to the station or the day crew on the night time, then to proceed to there. We will get there to dwelling fires. The reason we've set that slightly quicker for dwelling fires than all other incidents is that's what we view as our significant life risk incidents. They are typically more addressable, so they're easier for control to process them, and they typically happen more in locations where we have fire cover as well. Yeah. The other standard we set is generically for all the incidents we attend. The reason that's a bit bigger as well is I mentioned earlier about some of the additional support we provide now to the ambulance service as well. There are other calls that we do respond to that are less time critical as well. There are some incidents we still attend that don't actually require blue light attendance, so we will travel at normal road speed. So we set that at 13 minutes, which benchmarks again pretty well, and you can see the supporting documentation in the public consultation. So they've now been approved, and that's a standard that we wish to be held to account on. Our response times did go over 13 minutes 2 years ago, and we understandably and appreciate the challenge and scrutiny of that, and we set a standard now that's aimed to be a balance between being ambitious and achievable for us as a service. Thank you.
Great. So just a couple of questions, I guess. It's really welcome, and obviously it's great to be doing the things that the inspectorate have already highlighted. But actually, my question was more around the outliers. So if 11 minutes is an average, or 13 minutes for all incidents is an average, we must have some outliers in there. And I guess it's how do you balance the risk in those outlier areas, and just in terms of either the immediate kind of communication that would be taking place from a call handler, or in terms of the prevention work that you might be kind of targeting in advance. So just really to understand if 11 minutes or 13 minutes is an average, presumably somewhere there'll be I don't know, an 18-minute or a 20-minute, and it's just kind of how do you, and some of them will be 3 minutes, which is great, but how do you then deal with those outliers at the other end, just in terms of managing those risks?
Yeah, thank you. So in terms of the ones, we do have areas of the county, given the geography, that we can't provide an immediate response within those times. It is an average for transparency. So what we do, and we can evidence the fact, is that we are doing heightened levels of prevention work and community reassurance in those areas. So if you do live in a very rural area, please do go on our website and look at how you can access some of our home fire safety visits as well. And we do routinely monitor these, Deputy Mayor, so we have an exception report. So a dashboard's been built where if any of our attendances breach those averages, we look at them on an individual basis as well and see if there's any learning or changes we can make as a result of that. So they're the 2 kind of key areas that we look at to make sure we mitigate the risk outside those areas.
Great. That was my main question. I guess the only other thing, just on those outlying areas and the prevention work that you're doing, just how much work with other agencies we might do in some of those places. So I'm just thinking in particular around older people, so maybe adult social care or any of those kind of partners in local authorities. And others, just what work would go on there, just around the fact that, you know, if someone is in a very rural location and is identified as somewhere where there might be that kind of outlying problem around the response time, just what we do with partners as well.
Yeah, thank you. So we don't have Tom with us today. Tom's the area manager for prevention, and he'd answer that question, do it a bit more justice than me. But it's we will go out anywhere in the county. We've got a devoted prevention team now that enables us to access all those areas. We've also, over the last year, developed changes where our on-call firefighters will do levels of prevention work. So in our very rural areas, we'll have on-call firefighters go out and do prevention work, which didn't used to happen as much either. So we can access that. And then we've got some very well-established kind of safeguarding boards, partnership working, which do lead to a lot of two-way referrals as well. So it is a multi-agency approach to those individuals highly vulnerable in those areas as well.
Yeah, great. All right, thank you. We can move on.
Thank you. I won't go into too much detail on this slide. This is probably more for anybody who's interested in logging onto it. It's just a bit of a breakdown about how the Home Office defines the component parts of our response time. More probably for awareness that I can cover with tight on time today. And just want to leave it with a good news story. So as I mentioned earlier, 2 years ago, our response times to primary fires exceeded 13 minutes. So you can see on the graph on the left, we have got a very similar trend line to the graphs I showed you from the Home Office data nationally earlier this year. So we obviously, the media and everybody mentioned about our response times increasing. So that's where we activated the response times improvement plan. So very positive to be able to report on this year's Home Office data when it was released a month or two ago, is that North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service has the most improved response times of anywhere in the country. So you can see the downward tick that year, which is very positive to see over the last financial year. And on the graph on the right-hand side, that's just showing the changes of response times in different places in the country. The darkest blue showing the best improvement, ranging to deepest orange being the regression in some parts of the country. So we are pleased to see most of the predominantly rural areas are more orange coloured. We are very dark blue. So it's, you know, great to see that positive improvement and hopefully signs that a lot of the work we've been doing in response and the improvement times has taken effect. We do still have challenges, no doubt about that. We are seeking further improvement, but there is, you know, cause to be optimistic, as I said earlier, in terms of being able to control what we can control.
Always cautiously optimistic, surely. It's just really whether or not what's your confidence level about being able to retain that that kind of pattern going forward? Because obviously, you know, I appreciate that, you know, in terms of response times, every couple of seconds it makes a massive difference, and it's easy to suddenly have one poor response time to affect your average. So it's just really how confident you are about retaining that.
I'm very confident, Deputy Mayor, yes. And I think it's about, when I mentioned earlier about the component parts, you can do everything you can that's in your control. We don't want to get to the point where we are rushing call handling. We don't want to get to the point where people are taking unnecessary risks to get to jobs quicker than they should, the drive to arrive policy. But it's about, so eventually, this isn't something that can just keep improving year on year and go down to certain levels, because it's dependent on factors such as funding and coverage. But we certainly don't anticipate, and we hope that now setting response standards and shifting the focus in terms of performance indicators, that I'm certainly very confident we will sustain this improvement.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's wonderful. I think we can move on.
Thank you. So just the last slide for me, I mentioned quite a lot there. I think if you do speak to on-call firefighters, they'll say it's an amazing and rewarding thing to do. It is, something that requires a lot of commitment. There may be some people that prior to the changes that will take effect in January, around the number of hours you need to provide, may have previously put people off. So we do have vacancies at several of our on-call fire stations. It's just a bit of a plug there that if anybody's watching this and would like to be an on-call firefighter, we do have places on some of the courses next year. So if you do live within 4 or 5 minutes of an on-call station, please do get in touch, see how the new changes of kind of working hours and remuneration work, it is now more beneficial and more financially rewarding with the changes that will come in January as well. So please do take another look at it, look on our website, and we welcome applications from all. Thank you.
Brilliant. And I'll just echo that, and the fact that also that we're looking at how we can work with employers across the combined authority with the mayor, just to ensure that we're doing everything we can to support employers who have staff members who want to be on call firefighters, to encourage them to do that and show our appreciation for the ones that do, because it is really important in a region like ours that we've got businesses who kind of appreciate the role that on-call firefighters make. So yeah, just to echo what you were saying there, that's brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, I think we're moving on to the spotlight section, and we've got 2 issues to cover. I'm not sure who is going to pick them up, but the first one was just around the Framework for Change project that was commissioned with Huddersfield University, and whether either the fire chief or the chief fire officer or the deputy chief fire officer could just provide a short update on that and where things are with that.
Absolutely, Deputy Mayor. I'll pick that one up. I'm conscious of time, so I will keep this brief. I think it's fair to say Emergency services, including fire and rescue services, are fundamental to public safety and trust. They're expected to protect communities from harm and provide critical services, obviously during emergencies. However, over recent times, there have been a number of high-profile cases, including a couple of comprehensive reviews looking at organisational culture and behaviour in the fire and rescue service. Under the leadership of the Chief Fire Officer, we thought it was critical that we actually held a mirror up to ourselves as a service to ensure that we are creating the right environment for operational excellence, but also that people are able to bring their whole selves to work. So we entered into an independent collaboration with Huddersfield University to develop what we've called a framework for change and improvement. The university has been working with us for, well, almost 12 months now, and they've been applying an academic framework, if you like, to drive our understanding of all the factors which influence behaviour and culture. The outcomes of that will be a behavioural and cultural leadership charter, alongside what we call the core understanding of what is our ethical health, in order for us to be able to improve, as I've said, the environment that we work in. The project's been led by Dr. Tom Simcock from Huddersfield University, and we're in what's called phase 2 of a 3-phase approach. The first phase was actually looking at the organisation and conducting individual interviews with anybody who wanted an interview, and that was through February and March 2024. We also had focus groups, in addition to what was an all-staff survey. And the purpose of that was to analyse the data and give us the opportunity to we said, we did kind of approach. So we said these are the problems in the service and this is what we're doing about them. I think it's really important to understand that this was, whilst it was a Chief Fire Officer and SLT decision to do the collaborative piece of work, we've stepped well away from that to ensure that it's organisational culture, whether that's our operational firefighters, support staff, whoever, to understand what our organisational culture is like. Phase 2 now is around, that's from September to the end of November. That's going back out to the stations, to our support services, undertaking what will be 42 focus sessions to actually understand the feedback that we've had in phase 1, going back to, right, this is the feedback and what are we as a service going to do about it? And that's where we are at the minute, Deputy Mayor. Phase 3 will be actually the more academic side of that, which will be writing all that up and providing us with a framework for change that has been independently delivered and driven by our workforce to allow us to understand our organisational culture much better now, but also in the future. So that's a very whistle-stop tour of where we are. Could go on for a long, long time, but I'm conscious of time, Deputy Mayor, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. No, I think it's useful for people just to understand that the work is taking place. It is one of those kind of backstage pieces of work, and it's about kind of the long-term kind of cultural change, making sure that we've got the best professionals in the fire service, and just making sure that people are supported in that process as well. And so thank you for the update. I also just wanted to ask about Bonfire Night and just how that season had been in terms of the campaigns that took place, and whether or not we managed to have well, it's not even a night for us, is it? It's a season. So just, oh, sorry, I've got an echo all of a sudden. Whether it's possible to just have an update on how that went and whether there are any significant issues to flag in a public setting, it would just be useful to have that update. Oh, we can't hear you.
You'd think I'd be used to that by now, sorry. So we run 3 key activities starting from the 1st of October right through to the end of November, which covers the Dark Nights, road safety tips, Halloween, and then into Bonfire Night. Now, over this period, due to the interventions, or namely from the interventions that we've had into the education, we didn't have any significant events in there, thankfully. On Boxing Day, cracker, we are struggling. On Bonfire Night, we saw a large increase in incidents. For us, it went over 30 incidents, which is a lot for us. However, none of those, thankfully, were of any consequence, and all of them were dealt with successfully. What I will say to people on this, we'll put all of our information and advice to the public on the website, so please do go there. There's lots of health and safety
tips that anybody can follow. And if they would like any more information, we're more than happy to come and speak to individuals as well. Thank you.
And there weren't any, I suppose the thing to watch out for is if there's any trends that are occurring around that time of year, whether or not people are suddenly deciding that what they must do is have an indoor bonfire or something ridiculous like that. There's no trends that we saw this year that would make us worried about the kind of approach we might need to take in future years.
No, nothing, but we do continue to analyse these, and we also feed these into the national forum so that we can learn nationally from what other services may experience as well.
Great. Brilliant. Thank you for that update. And we'll move on to I think it's the inspection update, which is next. And I mean, I guess we've got a whole set of slides. Who's presenting this bit?
This is me, Deputy Mayor, again.
Brilliant. Thank you, Damien.
If you can let me know when you can see the slides.
I can see it now. I can see it now. If you want to, so there's quite a lot of slides, and I'm not going to lie, they're a little dry to a human ear and eye. So if you want to just, I've got a couple of questions, but the kind of bread and butter of it is, how happy are you with the progress that is being made, and are we getting things embedded sufficiently so that the public will see those improvements? Now, we've seen some of that in terms of the slide decks we've already looked at, but just from an HMIC FRS perspective, if you could just have that in mind while you're briefly, hopefully, talking us through those slides.
Certainly, Deputy Mayor, and the slides that were provided for the website, they go into much more detail than the slides I've got here, you will be thankful to know. So first of all, just on this slide, this was the position following our last inspection. So we had 8 recommendations associated to 2 causes of concern and 24 areas for improvement. Since then, directed at the whole sector, there were 19 recommendations which came under values and culture, and we've recently received 15 recommendations on the way in which fire and rescue services handle misconduct. With regards to those, as we look through, these are the causes of concern. As you can see, most of these have now been completed, or a high number of them are being proposed to close. These are around areas such as ensuring compliance with the Working Time Directive and the way in which we manage absence.
So is blue already done? Just sorry.
Blue is already done. Blue is completed.
Great.
And green, as you can see, is on track, but most of these now are shown as proposing them to turn blue. So a really good position to be in just prior to HMI coming back into the service on the 6th of January.
Brilliant, thank you. And then just on that slide, sorry.
Yes.
That one, awaiting enable review report, is that something that is imminent, or is that something that takes a while?
No, that is something that is imminent, Deputy Mayor. We have the report. We're just going through that review now. What I will say with regards to that recommendation, we have assigned the enable review to that recommendation. In my opinion, we have already achieved that recommendation, because this is the way in which our support services, alongside other partners like police, we work together, and we've got lots of evidence in there. For our benefit, we just wanted to get a really rounded response and lots of evidence for us to close this off. HMI have already closed off both these causes of concern. We just want to make sure we have got the most well-rounded evidence that we possibly can. So we're just waiting for that enable review report just to add into the evidence. It's sort of ensuring that we cross every T and dot every I prior to the new inspection.
Wonderful, music to my ears. Right, you can carry on, sorry.
Yeah, so with regards to the 24 areas for improvement, as you can see, Most of those are now in a position, actually, a lot of these, because we provided these slides 2 or 3 weeks ago, there are far more proposed to close. I'm currently drafting our self-assessment, which we need to return to HMICFRS prior to their inspection visit. As part of that self-assessment, they wanted a response to each of the cause of concern recommendations and the areas for improvement, and I've been able to just draft a summary response to each of those areas for improvement, directing them to evidence that we've already got to show how we've addressed all of those areas for improvement that were identified in the 22 inspection from them.
Brilliant. That's really good. Thank you.
Values and culture. This is another question that they've asked for in the self-assessment, and I do appreciate that not all services have addressed all of the recommendations in the culture and values report. We've returned our reports on each of these recommendations to HMI. They wanted further clarification on one of the recommendations which we provided to them, and then they have been comfortable that we have addressed each of those recommendations within the values and culture. The structures that we've got in place and the governance meetings with regards to HMICFRS have allowed us to sort of really address these and the misconduct handling recommendations really well. Each of these recommendations has got a senior responsible owner that details how we've responded to each of these and provides evidence to the inspection team on what we have done to address any of the findings.
That's really helpful. And I think, you know, that the public probably don't appreciate just how much detail and how much work goes into these preparations for the inspection, the next inspection off the back of the previous one. So, you know, just to give people a sense of volume, I think, of the amount of work that is taking place. I don't know whether it's possible to just say something about one of those, just so that we've got a sense of, so that people have got a sense of the kind of work that would be going on there.
Yes, certainly. So with regards to like the areas for improvement, so one of the areas for improvement that we had to cover off was with regards to prevention. So we're ensuring that our prevention activities were evaluated, and also to ensure that we had a quality assurance process with regards to our prevention activities. We've done that in full. What the internal inspection team do is, over the past 18 months, they've gathered evidence. So we aren't just saying to HMI when they come back to visit us in January, we're not just saying to them, oh yes, we've completed this. We're able now to say we've completed that recommendation. We now have a way of evaluating our prevention activities to make sure that it provides good outcomes for members of the public. The way in which we have evidenced that is through this policy, procedure, guidance. This is where it's done. This is the tool that we use. So there has been a huge amount of work in the background, but it does allow us at this visit to direct the inspectors that come in, the 8 inspectors that come in. We're able to direct them to documents, to activities, to the dashboards that Ben talked about in the previous presentation. We can direct them to all this work that we've done, so they can see all of this work, how it's been evidenced, how those decisions were made through the governance route, so it is a complete picture for them when they come back in January.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you.
This is the standards of behaviour report, so misconduct handling. As you can see, there was a recommendation which needed to be done with immediate effect. That has been completed. We have also, again, things move fast. In 2 weeks, we have also proposed to close recommendation 5 and recommendation 13, they were shown as being due on the 1st of November. So those two are proposed to close as well. And recommendation 8, we just need to get a couple of bits more of evidence to be able to propose to close that one off as well. That is how we're supporting individuals through misconduct handling, and we've actually just had a independent internal audit with regards to how we manage misconduct handling that should be able to sign off an evidence against that recommendation 8 as well.
Brilliant, fantastic.
That just is how we monitor them. With regards to our timeline, lots of activity with regards to HMICFRS. The 6th of January is coming round very, very quickly, but we are in a good position. So on the 29th of this month, we will be returning all the documents that HMICFRS have requested. Each of the documents that they've requested are current and in date, and we will be providing them with a self-assessment answering a number of those questions. That self-assessment should be finished by this Friday and will be circulated for approval from the chief and others. But having drafted the self-assessment, we're not at a loss for what to say. I think the difficulty when HMI come back in January, there has been lots of activity. It's ensuring that we can recount and recall all of the activity that we've done over the preceding 2 years and make sure that we get that across to the inspectors to see all the work that's been undertaken.
It's brilliant. Yeah, thank you. The timeline's really helpful.
You and this just talks through our preparations for inspection. So you can see there the document request and self-assessment. Our service liaison lead who works for HMI is now raising engagement with the service. They've been into the service a couple of times in the last 2 weeks. We are now developing the timetable for inspection activity, and as you can see there, a number of areas that they will look at. So it will be interviews, desktop reviews, case studies, reality testing, which is where they go out to some of our locations and to operational staff in prevention and protection, and they will have a walkthrough of all of the areas that we've probably discussed today. The inspectors will ask all those staff members to sort of show them what they do, and there will also be a number of focus groups. And then the inspection fully will start on the 6th of January with a strategic briefing where the HMI for our region will come up and senior leaders will give them a strategic overview of the service and the direction of travel that we've had in the last 2 years.
Brilliant. All right, that's really helpful. So I think, am I right in thinking then that the next time that we have a fire-based public meeting will be after all of this? Is that right?
It will, Deputy Mayor, yes, I believe.
So yes, because the police one is on the 22nd of January, I think. Amanda is very helpfully telling me the next fire public meeting is on the 27th of February. So actually, you'll be on the other side of it by then.
We'll be on the other side. I think we will have, following the inspection, they will do what HMICFRS call a hot debrief. So they won't give us any judgments, but they will give us an overview of what they've found in the service. I think it's highly likely we will get the report sometime April, May next year. Right. But certainly, from a senior leadership team point of view, we're really hopeful that it shows all of that activity that we've done over that past 2 years, because huge amount of activity all across the organisation.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. That's really helpful. We've just got a couple of public questions that I think have been sent in. One is from Bob in Sherburn and Elmet, who has a question about the fire stations, which, if it's the Bob I'm thinking about, has raised this with me in person as well. So particularly his concerns are around the industrial estate, which has large numbers of day people there, because it employs a lot of people on an industrial estate, with further plans for additional employment in the area. And just the residential population increasing in that area. So just to ask whether either the chief or deputy can just give any sense of when any assessment about need and fire cover for Sherburn might take place, and whether or not at the moment the cover, which presumably comes from Selby and Tadcaster, is that right? Just what your assessment of all of that is, just to provide some response to Bob.
Absolutely, and Bob, thanks for the question. So Sherburn currently lies within the average attendance time that Ben has talked about there from Tadcaster, but ultimately we review this constantly. The data analysis that we undertake, as Ben has gone into detail there, ensures that we are providing that average fire cover within those areas. What we also undertake is every 3 years a comprehensive review of all the risks within the organisation, and such as this population areas and density changes and risk changes, to make sure that our model remains fit for purpose. As Ben's talked around there, we are underway with that process now, and we will be consulting in that by May next year. So any changes to the geography, to the demography in the county, wherever people are living or working, is constantly reviewed. If this highlights a change in the data, then this is something we will publicly consult upon, and any change, of course, will be agreed by yourself, Deputy Mayor, on how we move forward. So, Bob, yes, thank you very much for raising this. We are constantly monitoring it, and if it comes up as a significant risk in the next risk and resource model, then we will look to address it as well. Thank you.
Great. Brilliant. Thank you very much. I think we have one other question, yes, from Margaret in Ripon, which was more widely about partnership with health colleagues in terms of, we've probably covered some of this in terms of the prevention work that's taking place across the service, but just around partnerships with other services. I think, to be fair, Ben had to leave for another meeting and covered some of this in his presentation. I don't know whether anyone can just pick up on the questions that Margaret's raised specifically.
Yeah, sure, I'll do that, Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Margaret, it's a great question. Thank you very much for posing it. So ultimately, Ben's covered some areas there where all of our firefighters on call and also whole time, whichever duty system, all go out to support police and ambulance service for the public. What we've also got is our public safety service. So key officers in the Craven area, but we're looking to expand that across the county, who go out and actually work with ambulance responders. And they are all already emergency first responders. So they are able to respond with defibrillators in support of the ambulance. And where they need to as well, they will provide interventions such as picking people up through slips, trips or falls. So it's something now that we've piloted since 2020. Earlier this year, we made it a business as usual element, and the public have seen a massive return on the investment that we put in for there. For every £1 the taxpayer puts into there, there's a £7.50 return. So it's an enormous saving. But all chief officers are looking at this. It's certainly something that we would like to expand into the health remit for firefighters and for the public. So yes, absolutely. We monitor it. We're gathering statistics on there, and it's certainly something we would like to engage more in the future. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And thank you to Margaret for the question. I think that concludes the agenda for today. So I'll just confirm that the next online public meeting is with the North Yorkshire Police, and will be the 23rd of January. And the next fire service public meeting will be on the 27th of February. Thank you everyone for your time and contributions to the meeting today. Incredibly helpful, and they'll be available to watch back, but also if people have questions, they can raise them with my office anytime, and we will happily get back to people in writing. Thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you. Thanks everybody.